Tactics businesses use to trick you. Companies say on their website that there's more people looking at the product or flight ticket that you want to buy to pressure you into buying it before it runs out. But it's usually a fake number that's randomly generated. Sometimes large packages are used to make people think that there's more things inside it than there actually is. So you should always check the total weight of the package and not just look at the size. One of the most popular tactics is the 99-cent effect. Customers would rather buy a product that says it costs 99 cents instead of $1 because they focus on the first number. By saying items are limited in stock or about to run out, creates scarcity for the buyer, which makes you buy it faster or want it even more. Ambient lighting and music in a restaurant are used to create feelings in customers depending on what you want to convey. For example, in some fast food places, they can make it noisy to make customers buy and leave quickly to generate more money from future customers. Scammers who got caught in the act. In China, people trying to scam drivers is common. In this video, a man was driving down a narrow road when suddenly a lady walked into the middle of the road and laid down, and then waits for the vehicle to get close to her so she pretends that she's been hit. But the driver put the car in reverse, then the lady got off the ground and tried to dent the front of the vehicle then lay back down. If the man didn't have the dash cam, they may have thought he actually hit her. In this video, a man's driving along when suddenly a car pulls out in front of him and zigzags to try and cause a minor collision. The car then stops and a group of men get out, blocking the driver from continuing. The way the scam works is the men try and get the guy's insurance details so they can claim money from the company for supposedly being hit. But when the driver tells them that they're being recorded, they just walk away and try and find their next victim. These simple objects hide a secret from you in plain sight. The marks on the side of coins haven't always been there. In the 18th century, people were saving coins to make new ones, which is clearly illegal. So to stop this, they began engraving the sides to prevent them from being manipulated, which worked. The ring on cans lets people put their cigarettes there, but also if you have a painting that's fallen, because one of the hooks detached, you can screw the ring into the painting and hang it again. Water bottles can be used to create a small greenhouse. Just cut the bottom and you can watch the seed grow. The Orbit chewing gum has a secret hidden in the logo. The round shape of the O has two colors. The light one represents day and the dark one represents night, just like our planet orbiting the sun. And finally, if you place garlic cloves in the microwave for 10 seconds, the husk will separate so you don't have to peel it with your hands. 5 people who beat the system part 5. At this resort, you're not allowed to have drinks by the pool, so they made a massive straw and left the drink on their balcony. This guy said his name was Mark, spelled with a C, so instead of changing the K to a C, they changed the M to a C. The teacher told them they could only have a one-sided cheat sheet, so this student taped the paper to make both sides one side. This guy's girlfriend told him to wear a plain tie, so he sent her this picture of a tie with planes. Now before I show you the smartest one, I found a really addicting app that lets you create games to play with your friends, and also play millions of other games created by other players. Just press a button on my profile to get it. Finally, this town wasn't allowed to have a statue so close to the road, so they put a flag in it to make it a flagpole. 3 times Google Maps saved lives. In 2016, 3 sailors were shipwrecked and had to swim to a deserted island. They had the idea to write the word help in the sand with rocks and palm leaves. After 3 days, a person using Google Satellite saw the word, and they were finally rescued by the US Navy. In 2017, Austin Bohannon went hiking, but he soon realized that he was lost. He hiked through the forest for 11 days. That's when he thought he could maybe get a GPS signal. So he tried Google Maps and it worked. Then he followed it to a town, where he went to a hospital and was treated for exhaustion and dehydration. And finally, in 2006, David Lee disappeared with his car. But then in 2017, someone was searching for a pond on Google Maps when they seen something unusual. It was David's car submerged into the pond with him still in it. Unfortunately, in this case, Google Maps didn't save a life, but it was able to give closure to the family that was still looking for him. This boy lived in a bubble for 18 years. Jimmy Livingston was born with no immunity, so he had to be kept isolated. His parents made him a plastic bubble that he couldn't get out of, and they could only touch him with gloves. When he was 16, he was attracted to his neighbor Chloe, who he could see through his window. When his overprotected mom found out about this, she warned him that if he touched her, he would die. As the years went on, Jimmy and Chloe became friends, until one day Chloe gave him news that left him really sad. She would be leaving soon to marry her fiancé at Niagara Falls. Since Jimmy was in love with her, he decided to make a suit, so he could go outside and interrupt the wedding. A few days later, he arrived just in time to interrupt the wedding. Then he confessed his love for Chloe and got out of the suit and kissed her. His mother arrived just in time to see him and told everybody the truth. Jimmy was perfectly fine. She was just holding him captive to keep him away from the rest of the world. In the end, Jimmy forgives his mother and ends up marrying Chloe. Secrets hidden in national monuments. The Lincoln Memorial was unveiled on May 30th, 1922. It was created to honor the memory of the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. This monument hides 2 secrets. The first is a spelling error that can be seen in the inscriptions on the north wall. If you look closely at the word future, you can see a smudge on the letter F because the sculptor accidentally put an E instead of an F. The second is that underneath there's a huge basement full of stalagmites and graffiti from 1914. The Washington Monument is a popular place for tourists who go to see the capital of the United States. But something that not a lot of people know is that there's a small replica close to the real one. While the real monument measures 169 meters, the replica is only 3.6 meters. The name of the replica is Benchmark A and was created to be a geodetic control point for surveyors to ensure that maps are as accurate as possible. This 5-year-old girl disappeared every night until her father followed her to this house. It took 4 days for Tom, who's Annie's father, to realize that she wasn't in her room or in the backyard where she always played. When the girl finally showed up, he asked where she was, but she didn't say a word. On the 5th day, Tom decides to follow her without her noticing, but he loses sight of her. On the 6th day, he tries again and this time manages to follow her to her grandparents' abandoned house. He stayed hidden while he watched his daughter greet a female stranger. He then waits for his daughter to leave, then walks up to the stranger and questions her. She was an 80-year-old lady named Linda who ran away from her nursing home because she didn't want to live there. So she wandered the streets with dogs that she adopted until she met the girl who provided her with shelter and met her every day at the same time to give her food. Eventually, Annie's parents gave the house to Linda and later with the help of donations turned it into an animal shelter. Secret rooms that people found in their house. Ohio University students thought their house was haunted because their closets kept opening and they were hearing noises. After looking around, they found a room in their basement that led to a secret closet. They found a bed, books, and photographs that belonged to a stranger that was living there that they didn't know. A Reddit user shared a picture of a passageway in their new house. When he entered, he found a locked door that led to a secret room. Inside, he found a briefcase and a safe that had money, watches, and the most terrifying thing was a videotape saying the words "no, no, no." The tape was turned over to the police to try and solve the mystery. Finally, a man noticed some unusual boards in his basement, so he tried moving them and he found a room in his house that he had no clue existed. Inside, it was filled with ammunition and empty gun cases. There was even a grenade, but it was thankfully confirmed to be a dud. Dark secrets that zoos don't want you to know. Zoo pens are a possible source of salmonella, E. coli, and many other diseases, so be careful when touching the animals. Some animals can suffer from zoonosis, which they get from being held in a zoo that causes them to tick, groom excessively, and make them anxious. And to control it, they give them medication. When zoos have too many animals in very little space, they give them pills to prevent them from having babies, or they sacrifice them at birth. The food given to animals isn't always the best. In many cases, they're given processed foods, and animals like tigers who only eat meat develop dental problems and become anxious because they can't hunt. Finally, it's 50 times more expensive to keep an elephant in a zoo than to let it run free. The scariest booby traps in the world. Punji sticks were one of the most famous booby traps used in the Vietnam War. It was made out of bamboo sticks with a sharp point at the end, which were placed in deep holes that they camouflaged so nobody could see them. The goal is that the enemy would fall into the pit and the punchy sticks would pierce them. Cartridge traps, also known as toe poppers, were bullet cartridges that were placed inside a bamboo tube and a nail which they camouflaged into the ground with the tip protruding. When stepped on, the pressure of the bullet caused it to fall on the nail, igniting the primer and exploding. Finally, when the Germans were retreating from the cities of Europe, they made sure to place expensive works of art with explosives that would go off with the slightest movement. The trick was to leave the paintings slightly tilted so that when they were straightened, they would explode. Prisoners who escaped prison and were never found. Clarence Anglin, John Anglin, and Frank Morris are the only 3 prisoners who managed to escape Alcatraz prison in 1962. Because the prison is on an island, they probably died in the icy waters of San Francisco, but their bodies were never found. Sharon Kin murdered 3 people and was sentenced to life imprisonment in the 1960s. After 13 years in a Mexican prison, she managed to escape thanks to a blackout. To this day, her arrest warrant is one of the longest in US history. John Patrick Hannon and Gwyneth Thomas escaped from the Verne prison in England. They used several knotted sheets to climb over a wall, and within a few hours, Thomas was captured. But Hannon has been free for 66 years and is considered one of the most successful escapees. 5 animals that can kill themselves. Sometimes the horns of rams and goats grow so curved and big that they penetrate their skull, causing their death. Horses and donkeys can suffer from abnormal growth in their hooves. If their hooves aren't trimmed, they can no longer walk because of the pain, causing them to die from starvation. When turtles fall on their back, it's really hard for them to roll back over. When this happens, they usually die from too much sun, starvation, or attacks from another animal. During mating season, deers get into such aggressive fights with each other that their antlers get stuck together to the point where they can't be untied. When this happens and no one can separate them, the deer die because they're unable to eat. Finally, the deer pig is famous for its 2 upper tusks. The growth becomes so uncontrollable that it pierces the upper part of their jaw, and in some cases when they're really big, they could pierce their skull, causing their death. Mysterious photos that can't be explained. In this photo, if you look behind this man's head, you can see a shadow behind him. The face of the shadow belongs to Air Force pilot Freddie Jackson, who had passed away and his funeral had taken place a few hours before. In this photo of students, you can see a hand that doesn't belong to any one of them, and although they thought it was a joke, many people think it was paranormal activity. This photo was taken on a bridge in Oakville, Kentucky. The shadow appears to be of a woman walking, and coincidentally, there's a story that a soldier murdered his wife and child near this location. After a family dinner, Mr. Cooper took this picture to remember, but when they looked at it, they seen a strange figure hanging from their ceiling. People who had one job but still failed. This person put up a sign saying give cyclists space, but it blocks off the bike lane. This person gave the baker a flash drive with the picture they wanted on the cake, but instead the baker put a picture of the flash drive. On the news, they were supposed to blur out the people in the background's faces, but you could still see them perfectly fine in the mirror. This person's job is to cut the grass, but they're too lazy to move the pylon. Now before I show you the most funniest one, I found an app that scans your palm and tells you your future. Just press the button on my profile to get it. Finally, this person put a drain in the only spot that doesn't get water, so I guess it's it's working, right? Homeowners who spent a fortune just for revenge. A couple that was in the process of a divorce in the 1920s made an agreement where the husband had to build a house for her that was identical to the house they were living in, but she didn't specify the place where she wanted it. So the man had it built in a saltwater marsh that was in the middle of nowhere. In a Seattle neighborhood, neighbors got into an argument about a small plot of land. The owner of the land was approached by his neighbor, who offered him a small amount of money for the land so he could grow a garden. For some reason, the landowner was so offended that he built a house. In the end, the neighbor moved because the house obstructed his view. In Argentina, Karina Cavana was rejected from her partner's mother, so in revenge she set out to build a house that would obstruct the view of the Basilica of the Blessed Sacrament from the home of the family that rejected her.